see. Yeah, there we go. All right. That's okay. Right. Well, let's see. I have access. Well, welcome to the first live Media Talks TV. I'm Tony J, and this is going to be a off script live. It's going to be one of my very first lives that I'm doing on YouTube. Normally, I do. Um, normally I do videos where my topics are actually very excuse me. Normally I do topics that are very scripted, but of course this is going to be kind of like off the cuff because this is going to be totally me expressing my point of view kind of off the top of the head. So, of course, I was going to make a video about the election, but I decided I think I should do a live, you know, because right now it's still very, very divisive, right? And you know, I ask myself time and time again, when is the Democratic Party going to take some accountability for why they lost the election? And one of the issues that I'm seeing on the news, that I'm seeing on social media, is everybody blaming the electorate, the people who voted. And of course, it's easy when the other side loses to where we forget that the shoe could have been on the other foot as well. And sometimes when you're so smug and arrogant that you think you're going to win and you come in overconfident, that's when you lose. And history really repeated itself again in terms of how we think about why the Democratic Party keeps losing to Trump. Whether you believe it or not, now with this election over, Trump has become a very Teflon character now. And after 2 assassination attempts, 2 impeachments, 57 indictments, the man still got to the presidency, which I will never understand. But of course, there's a reason. There's a reason why he got to the presidency. And of course, people don't want to hear this, but I'm going to say it here on the channel. Of course, arrogance will lead you to lose everything. Being smug and arrogant is what cost Kamala Harris the election. And I'll never understand that, but maybe in some ways I do understand it though, right? I correct myself. I do understand it. But I've had arguments with people over Facebook, and it's one reason why I decided not to do this cast on Facebook, where I've had to block people for arguing me down about why certain people voted for Donald Trump versus Kamala Harris, and those that voted for Hillary Clinton versus Donald Trump as well. And the biggest issue, the biggest thing that I notice about Donald Trump is that he knows how to sell people an idea. And being that he's a businessman, right? Being that he's a businessman, you have to understand when you sell ideas and when you market certain things, you appeal to people's emotions. And that's exactly why Donald Trump won this election. He appealed to people's emotions. And everybody around the news media says this election was won on feels and vibes. And that is true. He won on feels and vibes. But the one thing that Donald Trump is good at that makes him such a masterful politician is the fact that he knows how to sell you something. And I've always liked that idea. I've always liked that idea because I've been reading about Donald Trump for as long as I could remember. I read The Art of the Deal when I was in high school. I read several books while I was in high school. So the one thing I've always admired about Donald Trump is that he's a businessman. You might not like his politics, that's fine. I don't like some of the things that he says either. But he was able to drive certain things home in this election that the Democrats couldn't. And that is making people feel like they're a part of your family or feel like you agree with their grievances. It's the populism that drove Trump back into the White House. And when you have a populace and you have populism and a cult of personality, that's what wins votes. And that's what he did. Now, I'm going to tell you on the opposite side of this why Kamala Harris lost. So brace yourself. When you run on being the woman candidate, when you run on issues of abortion, when you run on issues of really when you only prioritize women, it turns another electorate off, and that was men. And it was simple as that. Men got turned off by her message. And then it's also the history of how the Democratic Party engages with men. And she knows this, and she understands this. It's one part of it. She wanted to run on this idea of she wants to turn back abortion and women's rights and women's bodily autonomy. But how do you do that? And how do you get men to engage in that discussion? And that was a tricky thing for her. You can't talk about abortion and abortion rights unless you talk about the issue of men trying to engage men in the discussion of abortion. And the problem is it was a thorny issue from the jump, because of course abortion issues have always been a third rail topic in politics. It's always been. The minute you touch abortion, the minute you touch Roe v. Wade, usually most political careers go nowhere after that. And that's one reason why this election kind of came down to this issue with abortion and the issue with economics. Now, the things that she missed and the things that were very critical for her to win the election, she didn't engage in. She didn't talk about the high cost of living. She didn't talk about how how rents were so inaccessibly high that people couldn't pay for an apartment, for a studio apartment. And people right now, they're looking at her and then they're looking at their bank accounts and they're saying, well, things don't match up. You want me to worry about abortion, but I'm over here trying to pay my rent. I'm over here trying to pay my mortgage on my house. I'm trying to buy a car, house. I'm trying to keep a roof over my head. So the ability to talk about what was more important, that came second, or very actually dead last, to abortion. Everything was about her running on abortion and what Donald Trump would do. And then she kept playing on this whole thing of fear mongering about what Donald Trump's second term might look like. He wants to be a dictator. He wants to do this. He wants to roll back women's rights. And they did the same exact thing the first time he ran. And then it was the mudslinging and the name calling. And then, of course, there was like this sense of being smug. And the biggest issue with her being, with Hillary also, and Kamala being smug, is you think you know what the electorate or the people are thinking, but when they go into that ballot box, it's a whole different story. And that's why, like, history just repeated itself. It didn't have to be like this, but the Democrats wanted to make it this way. The Democrats wanted to frame this shit as, oh, she's a prosecutor, he's a convicted felon. This prosecutor is going to convict Trump. And it's like, nobody cares about that. Nobody gave a fuck about her being a woman and him being a convicted felon. The central issue with most people that were voting was the issue of, can I pay my goddamn bills? Can I pay for my fucking rent? Can I get a decent paying job to take care of my family while 11 million immigrants, illegal immigrants, flood the border, flood into New York, flood into Chicago. And this is the mess that we were being shamed and demeaned into voting for. It's like you gaslit the whole entire electorate the whole time. And you had 100 days, but I don't blame Kamala Harris for the position she got put in. She got put in a very bad position. Your predecessor put you in a bad position, and you had to clean up his mess that he created. So now you're being kind of backed into a corner. Like she got backed into a corner. It was kind of like a Ivan Drago, Apollo Creed bullshit. You know what I'm saying? Like she got into the ring, arrogant. Ivan Drago whooped her ass. And that's exactly how this election went down. You will lose. I cannot be defeated. And that's exactly what happened. She got Ivan Drago'd. And I know everybody has seen that scene off of Rocky IV where Apollo Creed thinks he can beat Ivan Drago, and Ivan Drago is the machine. Ivan Drago didn't care about anybody but himself. But at the same time, he had the people of Russia behind him. And he knew he couldn't lose because he had the people behind him. That's who Donald Trump was. Donald Trump was Ivan Drago. And Apollo Creed was Kamala Harris. And she thought she had the ideals of America. And she thought she knew how all Americans thought. And the problem was she got into the ring and she got her ass beat. And they said, throw the damn towel. Throw the damn towel. And somebody threw the damn towel at her indeed because she lost Pennsylvania. She lost Pennsylvania. She did horribly in New York. She barely got enough electorate in New York City. How you do bad in the inner city? That's where your numbers should have ran up. You did horrible in New York City. You did horrible in Pennsylvania. You couldn't get Bucks County. If she got Bucks County, she probably would have won Pennsylvania. She probably would have gotten it. And then she lost Georgia and North Carolina. And I knew it was done after that. When I saw that shit, I was like, yeah, she's done. She came in with 3 votes at 7 p.m. Came in with 19 votes. He already had 91. He had 91 votes. He came in at 7 o'clock at 19 votes. She had 3. He ran the clock on her ass. Ran it up to 100 by 11:30. Then he was at 215, 211. Now, I knew after he got to 211, it was a done deal. Once he got to 220, that was it. She got her ass beat good. But I'm going to tell you why she got her ass beat, though. Because for the simple fact is throughout the whole 100 days that she was campaigning, she insulted certain electorate. If Joe Biden hadn't called them trash, if Joe Biden hadn't said, oh, they're trash, then of course they probably would have been able to win. But Joe Biden didn't stay out of it, and she had to clean up his mess. Like I said, she had to clean up his mess. And the issue was now you've backed her into further and even much more of a corner because now she's got to get her male votership up. And she couldn't do it. And then Obama backed her into a corner by lecturing black men talking about cousin Pookie and all this other stupid shit. Talking about, that's where the real man's supposed to be, putting a woman down. And I'm like, see, that's the thing right there. That's what's going to make you lose your fucking election. And you want to talk about sexism? You got two men. You got Obama speaking for you on behalf of you, and then you got Joe Biden speaking on behalf of you and trying to get the black male vote. And it was like, okay, I can't fathom how you could call somebody sexist or misogynist, and you have two former presidents speaking on your behalf, and you're making it seem like this is the reason why she didn't get elected is because everybody was a misogynist, all the men were misogynists, and they were toxic. And this is another thing I wanted to jump into too, because the Democratic Party needs to atone. And what I mean by atonement, because I know people don't understand that word atonement. Atonement means they have to do a redress for past mistakes. When you're walking around creating these buzzwords, because for the last, like, the thing that's made the Democratic Party kind of sink for me, like, I went independent around 2012 because the reason why I didn't distance myself from the Democratic Party, because they started playing politics. They started focusing on stuff to use tactics to try and tell their electorate that the conservatives were trying to take women's rights away. They were trying to set people back to a time when black folks had to go to the back of the restaurant and women had to be at home. Like, they always said that shit. Obama has tried to make diatribes about conservatives, saying that, the conservatives want to take you back to a time where things look like an episode of Mad Men. And I never understood that. And I was like, yo, why is he saying these things? And then also with Obama's presidency, we didn't see a lot being addressed with black men. And of course, with somebody like President Obama, I always felt like he stepped on fault lines when it comes to pleasing everybody, because he didn't want to alienate certain people. When he was running for president the first time, he didn't want to alienate white people. So he tried to play off being the first black president. And it's this habit with Democrats, they don't want to alienate anybody, and they always talk about they're the party of inclusivity. But the reality is that the Democratic Party is the most intolerant group of people that I have ever encountered and dealt with, even on a college level. Like, when I was going to school, I remember there were protests that went on around campus when I was a student at Towson. And I remember this incident. I remember the Coney 2012 thing. I don't know if you remember that, but the whole Joseph Coney 2012 thing that went across campus. This was around like 2012. And I remember them passing out flyers that all the students were going to meet in a protest at Freedom Square. And I was like, I don't have time. I got to go to my biology class. So I wasn't going to go. Then it was this white person at my school, and she's like, "Well, don't you want to protest for your people?" And I'm like, first of all, that's not my people. And this is the most insulting thing, because when I was in school, like, a lot of liberal whites think that all black people are the same, whether they be from America or from Africa. And that's the most asinine thing. But you have a lot of liberal whites that have this mentality about black electorates, that because there's an African overseas, that they think the same exact way as black folks in America, which is wrong and is ignorant. But you have a lot of liberal whites, and they never address that issue of where they look at black folks as a monolithic group of people. So that's why you start noticing with black folks in the Democratic Party, they always, like, every Democratic representative, they always go to churches, or they always meet up at soul food restaurants and shit, because they think that we're all like that, because they think that they've been around black folks long enough. And Hillary Clinton think exactly like that. That's why you notice when she went, she was always in Harlem, and she would always eat at Sylvia's. And a lot of times, which I don't bemoan that, but a lot of times when Democrats think about black folks, they think that all we do is eat soul food and drink Kool-Aid and eat fried chicken and shit. Like, they think like that, and it's a lot of white folks that did think like that, you know, for a very long time. That was a part of the Democratic Party for a very long time. And they was like, well, if you want to get the black vote, just go do a speech at a church. That was Joe Biden. That was Hillary Clinton. That was Bill Clinton. Those were all of those people did the exact same thing. And it's always been a recurring thing with the Democratic Party. That's why they don't think like us. But the thing that's the beauty of the Democratic Party today, and what can be learned from this loss, is they got to learn how to engage with different demographics. Every demographic ain't the same. And that pertains the same way with black folks. They think that all black folks think the same. But what I've noticed with Democrats, especially white folks in the Democratic movement, is they always engage with older black folks. They never engage with younger black folks. They never engage with younger black men. But they think they know every single electorate in the black community. But black folks are not a monolithic group of people. And I think that's where Kamala gets it wrong. She got it wrong. She should have been the type of person, like, I would have loved to see Kamala engage with black gamers, people who, do gaming. Like, I would have loved to see Kamala in a situation where she wasn't this pantsuit wearing woman, where she was just like, she's trying to get on this level of being a corporate woman. I would love to see her in her family role. She didn't show that while she was on the campaign. She showed, I'm ready to lead. I'm ready to be the first woman president. But she didn't show, how is she at home with her stepchildren? How is she at home with her husband? How does she engage with her husband at home? How does she engage with Doug? People would have loved to see that side of Kamala than to see her sit up here and talk about Donald Trump all the time. They would have seen, yo, she's a real family-oriented woman. And even though she's in a position of power, she could also be the woman at home taking care of her family and cooking and being this type of person where she loves on Doug. I would have loved to see her vulnerable, be a real vulnerable woman. Instead, we see this as her being a victim of sexism. Like, you go on The View and you watch The View, it's all about, oh, well, the reason why men won't vote for us because they think that women shouldn't be in a position of power and they want to take our abortion rights away. And when you talk like that and when you think like that, a lot of men got offended. They were offended by that shit. But nobody wanted to believe me when I said the way that she's going about with this rhetoric is going to turn off male voters. Where on the other side, Donald Trump was going around engaging with male voters. That's why he got the majority of the male vote. He talked to Elon Musk. He went on podcasts. But you saw Kamala, and she went on another female oriented podcast, and she got woke white women like Charlie XCX, and then there's the celebrities like all this pomp and circumstance shit. Beyonce with the Freedom song. I got tired. I don't ever want to listen to that fucking song ever again. Like, it's like an earworm. I hate that. Freedom, freedom, I can't lose. Freedom, I don't want to hear that fucking song no more. I hate that fucking song. I don't want to hear that. I don't want to hear that shit no more. I don't want to hear it. It was stupid. It was tone deaf. And motherfuckers saw right through that bullshit. And then she was on The View. And I would have never took a media blitz the way that she did, going on The View, then going on Howard Stern, all the nasty, degrading shit that Howard Stern has said in the past. And you going on there after you done left The View. And then wanted to get the black vote. So she hopped her ass over to The Breakfast Club and Charlemagne the God. And it was like, I'm tired of this shit. And I'm like, I just don't want to see this stuff no more. I'm tired of it. And so people got exhausted and it was like, well, I don't care about that. I don't think I'm gonna vote. And then you saw people getting shamed or forced. Like, it's like this emotional blackmail that they were doing. Like Kamala and the Democratic Party, they do this stuff every year, and people get tired of it. And it was like, okay, I'm trying to pay my fucking bills. I'm trying to find a job, and you're trying to blackmail me into voting for you because you're saying democracy is on the line. Didn't you say that shit the last time when Hillary Clinton was running? That democracy was on the line and all of this stuff. All of this stuff that turned the electorate off. And then when they don't want to vote for them, then they shame them. Then they do all this talking points. Like, people were exhausted. The whole country was exhausted. And all of this kind of culminated into them losing 2 elections to Donald Trump. Now he's going down in history as being the second, he kind of like pulled a Grover Cleveland basically and won 2 consecutive, well, he didn't, 2 non-consecutive terms. And it's like, you could have had him, but you fumbled. And all of this stuff that I noticed with the Democratic Party has started almost 12 years ago under Obama. Because when they weren't addressing real issues, when they were writing legislation and they were using buzzwords and they would focus on a women's vote, is always the women's rights. And it's like the Democratic Party for a very long time has prioritized women over young men. And every piece of legislation that has gone through, there was no legislation that focuses on black men or the redresses of African American men. And they didn't just start asking until now. And then she came up with this whole point plan for black men. And it was like, well, you're just coming up with it now because Obama said something that was offensive to the electorate, to black men. That's why black men didn't turn out that much for her. And that's what's so crazy. Like, this lack of accountability for trying to really take stock in people's grievances, personal grievances. And it shouldn't really be like that. And then it's the whole LGBTQ stuff that for a long time was being shoved down people's throats. No pun intended. They trying to virtue signal all this stuff. They create all these buzzwords, and this has been going on since 2014. Transphobia, homophobia, trying to get trans bathrooms and stuff like that, trying to pronounce the right pronouns like he, she, they, them. People got exhausted from that shit. People got exhausted being called white, talking about white privilege. Like, you got to pay for your white privilege, and you got all these people talking about grievances, like, making it seem like just because you're white, you got to pay for the sins of your ancestors. All these buzzwords, like, culturally, the Democrats have done a very big damage to the whole entire country because they've allowed all this social justice shit to creep in instead of really addressing real problems that people have. With the whole fucking Me Too movement shit, when the Me Too movement thing started, people got scared. Men got scared. People taking stock and trying to falsely accuse somebody, people piling on accusations. It was crazy. Like the whole culture. When you didn't win, then when Trump won the first time, then all of a sudden you saw all these women going after, filing these sexual harassment, sexual assault lawsuits for shit that happened 25 years ago. And people got tired of that shit. Men got tired of that shit. And they still don't have any type of sympathy for why she lost, because that the whole culture of the Democratic Party is really kind of diluted the culture of the United States. People pulling down statues, people breaking shit, people tearing stuff up, and then turning around and having on a local level, having shoplifting in San Francisco, shoplifting in Baltimore, Chicago, having these retail theft rings that were going around all over the country during and after the pandemic, having all these street races and burnouts all over the United States on a local level, and shit was getting so out of hand. And people were looking like, well, yeah, crime is an issue, but crime is down. But crime can't be down if somebody getting shot in my neighborhood. And that's the problem and the grievances that the Democratic Party wants to gaslight people about. Oh, crime is down, but if you see a homeless person taking a shit and pissing in a subway, that you mean to tell me that homelessness still isn't a crisis? That heroin addicts aren't still a crisis? That you can't take care, that people sleeping in tents on Venice Beach isn't a problem? And those are ills that were created by the Democratic Party because they don't want to address real issues. If you see homeless people and you see all this stuff happening and you seeing complete anarchy going on, like in Portland, Oregon, where they were burning shit up during the George Floyd riots, it got out of hand and people were like, this shit has got to stop. And that's one of the problems that they don't want to take accountability for. It's the culture of liberalism and liberal policies that have made it feel like people are getting exhausted and tired of what was going on. And yeah, Trump took a lot of the blame for it, but also when Joe Biden got into office and he took away certain COVID protections where everybody was getting stimulus checks, it kind of made people, when they took away the eviction protections, that was it for a lot of people. And that's what people was like relying on to keep them afloat. And now, even after the COVID crisis was ending, I started noticing how hard it was getting increasingly to get a fucking job. But then they turn around and they'll look at you and they'll say, oh, well, the job market is doing good. But how am I going to get a job when I see 400 restaurants and my restaurant in my neighborhood is closing down, and people on a lower level, which they not getting in touch with, they lose that restaurant in their community? Like, oh, Applebee's shut down, TGI Fridays done shut down. They closing up TGI Fridays. They closing up Bob Evans and shit. Just regular jobs that people depend on locally. You're seeing those jobs kind of just gone. And that's what was happening during Joe Biden's time in office. But yet he was saying that the job market was doing good. But then you're seeing restaurants fucking closing down. So people don't have easy access to those restaurant jobs, to those lower paying jobs. And then it was the whole thing with the immigration problem. You let 4 million or so immigrants flood New York City, where people still to this day can't even afford rent to live in New York City. And they had those COVID protections. They had those COVID protections, and then they're completely gone. And you're seeing people get evicted. And then you're seeing the people that live there that get evicted, while people that's coming in, migrants coming in by a bus, getting free housing, free food, free place to sleep. They sleeping in hotel rooms. They sleeping at bus depots. It was getting to a point where, why the fuck is he letting this happen? And people got pissed off. People got mad and angry. And they're like, you want me to vote for this person? You want me to vote for that after the mess and calamity that you created was just as worse as what Donald Trump did? Because you got migrants coming into New York and they're getting treated better than people that were asking for housing, got to go on housing lists. Been on housing lists for a year to get public housing and get food stamps. And the line cutters, they cut in line and they get housing and food and amnesty and all this other shit. And they're like, the hell with this. Fuck this. I'm not voting for this mess. That's why when Donald Trump said in his last speech before the election, were you better off than you are now 4 years ago? And I think that really burned something etched in their head. They're like, we didn't have all this immigrant shit 4 years ago. We didn't have high cost of living 4 years ago. Now it's a thing. And what do you think people were going to vote for? Were they going to vote to continue for Brandon Johnson, Mayor Brandon Johnson, to allow immigrants to live in public schools next to black folks, or let them live in hotel rooms? Were we gonna fucking allow that to continue? Because Chicago right now got it really bad. They got it real bad with the immigration issue. Immigrants having to live in certain neighborhoods and people don't feel comfortable. Like, it was a lot of stuff that people got tired of, and it was just that Kamala just got backed into a fucking corner, and she had to clean up her predecessor's mess. And I think that was that. If you want to talk about sexism and misogyny, there's no greater sexism and misogyny than to have to clean up the mess of the man that gave you the position of vice president. That's the most insulting thing. She was basically Joe Biden's maid. She was the fucking help. And that's what people don't understand. They don't get the big picture of this shit. Joe Biden turned Kamala Harris into the help. She was the help for Joe Biden. And that's why she ended up losing. She got fired when she asked for a higher pay. Isn't that what white folks do to black women all the time? Isn't that the most insulting thing that they do to black women all the time? They hire them on. White folks hire black women on as the help, and while he's making a mess, she comes in to clean it up. And that's essentially what she was doing. She was the help. She was in there to clean his mess up. Because at one point, I don't know how you could choose somebody that made a snide remark as calling you a segregationist because you agreed with busing. This was during her time when she was running for the presidential candidate in 2019. And she made that remark towards Joe Biden. And I think he got slick and said, yeah, I'll put her in here. I'm like, here you go. Boom. Vice president. You're the first black vice president in the United States. And then once he leaves, he said, oh, well, he gave up power to give her power. And black folks actually think this shit was symbolic. And that's the most insulting thing. I'm like, yo, isn't that what white folks do to us all the time? They give us some of the empty symbolism because they're trying to make themselves ingratiate themselves. And then you get elevated to that position, and then you realize even when you're in that position of leadership, you got to clean up his mess. Now, who would do that to somebody? Isn't that what they did to Obama? They elected him president, and he had to clean up Bush's mess. You know, at least with white folks, they don't leave each other's messes for somebody else to clean up. And that's the issue that people are not seeing. Everybody's thinking about their feelings that, oh, it's racism. But what if she was president? What if one day she was president and had to clean up Joe Biden's mess? And then if she messed up in those 4 years, she would have never got another term in office ever again. But at least she got to touch being in the White House. At least she got the chance to be in a position of power, being that she's the first black female vice president. She got a chance to do that. So there was some improvement there. You had to take stock in that. But all this bullshit about I'm gonna push trans rights and I'm gonna be putting a man in a dress to read to kids, drag queen story time, and all that other shit, and all this stuff about transgender reassignment and giving kids books about I'm a girl in a boy's body, I'm a boy in a girl's body bullshit. That's what's turning that electorate off. Those are the key issues that kind of just like, you getting a little nutty. You're getting stupid. You went from the party of common sense to the party of no common sense. And all this thing about trans rights and trans bathrooms and shit like that. Do you think Congress will finally deal with DACA? I don't know. I don't know, but I know right now I think Congress is going to be I think we're in for really a rude awakening in the House of Representatives. It's going to be. I think it's going. I think it's going to be probably majority Republican now because they're picking up seats. They're picking up a lot of seats. I mean, it's a red wave. It's a red wave right now. So I don't know if they're going to deal with DACA. I don't know if they're going to repeal DACA. They might. They might if somebody's here illegally. But I don't think they're going to touch DACA right now. To be honest, Randy. But I feel as though the Democratic Party has to be. I really do honestly feel the Democratic Party got to suffer get some licks. I mean, they have to be an atonement because they went too far left. And when you go too far left, people get turned off by that. It's too much crazy shit that they were doing for the last 10 years. And people just got exhausted. Hell, I got exhausted from the bullshit. I'm going to sleep and I'm sitting up watching YouTube videos and I see a video talking about don't get popped November 5th. The whole pop the balloon thing. I hated that commercial. I hated the vote commercial where there was these gamers and well, no, it was one where I don't know if you saw it, but it was one where there was a text message and these two girls were talking and they said they didn't want to date this guy because he didn't vote. Like stupid shit that just kind of got out of hand. Like I just could not deal with it. Like I got tired. I tried to block every voting ad that was out because it was stressing me the hell out. Like it's just too stressful for real. And I know people agree with that sentiment, but it's also how politics is kind of mess with a lot of my friendships too. Because now I'm in a situation where I've had to block maybe 4 or 5 friends whom I've had been longtime friends with. I've had to block them on my social media because every time I post something about Kamala Harris or I criticize Kamala Harris, it's all this finger wagging bullshit where you're just saying that because she's a black woman. Oh, you're saying that because you're a misogynist pig. You're a chauvinist pig, and all this virtual signaling and shaming and wagging your finger in people's faces about how they feel about certain groups of people. Like if you feel a certain way, and that's the thing about the Republican Party that I do to a certain extent respect. They're not trying to play up to people that don't like them. If you don't like them, then fine. You're not going to please everybody. But with the Democrats, they play this fucking game where, oh, we're the party of inclusivity. So I gotta get everybody to like me. And the party and the people, and there was an old saying back in the day, a friend to everyone is a friend to no one. And the Democrats are a friend to no one except fucking celebrities like Oprah and Beyonce and John Legend and Jay-Z and anybody that's giving them fucking money to campaign. I mean, it's crazy to think the smugness of that entire party, that you think you was going to switch out a 82-year-old man and put a woman in, to where you're now forcing people, jamming people in to vote for this person. You've only campaigned for 3 months, and it's crazy. Like I don't understand it. Like you really thought she was gonna win in 3 months? If she had a won, like that'd have been fucking impressive. That you campaigned for only 3 months and you actually fucking won. That would have been some crazy shit. That would have been impressive. That would have been unprecedented in political campaign history. But see, we don't live in the movie Bullworth. You see, we don't live in Wag the Dog. We don't live in the West Wing. We live in the real world where people have to have a chance to know that candidate. And 3 months was not that chance. So she missed out. But I feel sorry for her for the fact that she got put in a position to clean up Joe Biden's mess because he didn't have the heart nor the temperament to walk away in the beginning. And I think this is one of the biggest problems about the United States, too. And we don't talk enough about this in terms of value. If you know you're not good at something, if you know you're going to do bad at something, why keep trying and trying and trying, and you know you ain't good at it? And I think that's one of the biggest problems. Like, people say, well, that's about resilience. Yeah, it was her mess. It was her mess. And the thing about it was, she had 3.5 years. Everybody said she had 3.5 years to fix the problems of the border, and she couldn't. Yeah, and she did. Yeah, she did lie. She sat up there and I talked about the issue with the video that we saw on The View when she told everybody that she wouldn't change anything um in the presidency with Joe Biden, and she didn't do enough to distance herself from Joe Biden. I think she played up so much loyalty to Joe Biden that she kind of forgot that you're running a political campaign, and she probably did not want to throw Joe Biden under the bus. And if she had to just criticize Joe Biden and his policies a little bit and threw him under the bus, then I think she probably would have had a chance to win. She probably could have got the sympathy vote. But I'm going to tell you what really got the vote for Trump, and it had to deal with the two assassination attempts. Remember when Reagan was in office, when he got shot, the whole country rallied around him. It was Democrats and Republicans that rallied around Ronald Reagan when he got shot. And that's why he got 2 terms the way that he did. And that loyalty across party lines, you're starting to see that with Trump, that red wave. And the thing about it is, Joe Biden is going to go down like another Jimmy Carter. He did a lot of good, but he was not a very popular president. He's going to go out as being the most unpopular president in American history, probably worse than when Jimmy Carter was in office. you know. And that's the crazy thing about Joe Biden is, if Joe had acknowledged that he wasn't if Joe Biden had acknowledged that he wasn't the sharpest in certain things, he probably would have gotten some type of sympathy from the voters. And the problem is, of course, he's not. Of course, people are going to think that he was so out of touch that we put in somebody because we didn't want Trump to win. And he's going down as the president that has over 57 indictments, 2 assassination attempts, and 2 impeachments. I mean that in of itself makes Nixon look like the Pope. It makes Nixon look like the Pope in a sense, because never in the history of America will we have had somebody like Donald Trump to beat 2 indictments, 2 impeachments, and then 2 attempt assassinations. He was bound to win Pennsylvania after that. He was bound to win Pennsylvania. It just wasn't going to be the same way. And I think Joe Biden knew he had to step down, because when the Butler, PA incident happened, it was like something happened to him where he kind of realized well, I'm going to have to step aside. And he was reluctant. He was holding on. He was like, He walked out on National Ice Cream Day. Which I'm like, wow. Like he finally fucking reluctantly, begrudgingly left. I felt as if the changes were political, especially the New York case with the valuation of Mar-a-Lago. Yeah, I believe that the charges were political. No doubt. No doubt that the charges were political. Because I felt as though Donald Trump is one of those guys that he's a tough talking son of a bitch. Like, that's what New Yorkers are. Like, I've been around New Yorkers my whole life, and New Yorkers, like, everybody from Queens. The people I don't fuck with the most though are the guys from the Bronx and the guys from Queens. The guys from Queens, like every last one of the people that came out of Queens, they was some tough motherfuckers. Like, Queens people are the most astute business people in the world. Like, when it comes to, like, when somebody tell me they from New York and I ask them what part and they say from Queens, I'm like, I want to be around that guy. I want to be around that guy because Queens people are the most there's a lot of hustlers that come from Queens. I mean, come on. This is like Run DMC, this is Russell Simmons, Damon Johnson, Fubu, and you got so many guys that like so much like entrepreneurial people come from Queens, and those are the guys that really they take off. And Trump was in a position to where he could do a lot of great things, and he put his mind to it and he won. Like, that cannot be denied. There was a time in American history where, well, in popular culture, excuse me, where black people wanted to be like Donald Trump, where Donald Trump was in music videos, rappers was talking about they wanted to dress up like Donald Trump, they wanted to be like Donald Trump. They Nelly said something in one of his songs where he was talking about being like Donald Trump, getting Trump money and shit. Like, I remember when Trump was the most beloved figure in hip hop, and all of a sudden everybody, because he ran for president, everybody's like, oh yeah, fuck Donald Trump, fuck Donald Trump. And I'm like, hold up. 25 years ago, y'all wanted to be like him. Y'all wanted to have the women. Y'all wanted to have the casinos. Y'all wanted that lifestyle. So now you're telling me he's a racist because he said some shit 20, 35 years ago? 35 years ago, he wasn't a prosecutor. He wasn't a prosecutor. But Kamala Harris was a prosecutor. And she let a cop killer get away with murder in California. And I'm gonna tell you, I don't like politicians that come from California, because California is known for a lot of degenerate shit. I could tolerate politicians from New York, and a majority of the presidents that we've had have come from New York. I cannot tolerate any politicians that come from California, San Francisco, Los Angeles, because Californians have some of the most progressive policies, but their state is also a failure in terms of standard of living. And it's like, in America, we have like this kind of like this choice of, if you move it, and this is the same way for New York, because for a long time New York City had all the jobs and all the companies and corporations, and in the Midwest, people were losing factory jobs and losing steel mills, and all these communities like Indiana and Chicago and St. Louis, they were all losing their fucking industry, including Detroit. Everybody had moved all there in that space, and Detroit at one time had one of the highest populations in history, biggest city in the world. And then all of a sudden, once you got to the 70s and the 80s, with all these fucking liberal policies, then you saw all these companies with globalization move overseas. They took the industry out, and it was like, well, where's the industry now? Where's the capital now? Oh, I got to move to New York. I got to move to California. I got to move to Los Angeles or San Francisco, because that's where the jobs were. So it's like it left people in middle America destitute and poor. And that's why a lot of people were getting sick and tired of New York politicians and California politicians always taking the fucking jobs away from middle America, away from people, hard workers, like the so-called, Roseanne Barr type families. You know what I'm saying? You watched Roseanne before. And those were working class family people that had regular 9-to-5 jobs and come home and they take care of the kids, and they could afford a new truck and a new house and be able to have extra money in their pockets. These towns that Democrats forget about middle America because they don't try to engage with them. And the sad part is they alienated white folks, white Appalachia. Those are the guys that are suffering the most. There's no bigger minority than the white Appalachian. The white Appalachian man that's in West Virginia and Kentucky and Indiana. Those are the people that got tired of the liberals coming in and telling them, vote for me because I'm going to get your jobs back, and I'm going to do this, and I'm going to make you feel like a real American. That used to be the old Democratic Party, but what's the new Democratic Party now? Yeah, we're for inclusivity. We're for LGBTQ rights. we're for women's abortion, and they propped more women up, and they making men less than, and they making men feel like they're bad people. What party will sit there and use buzzwords like toxic masculinity? Oh, you're a toxic male. We don't want you to be a part of this party. Oh, you're a toxic. You're not a real man. When they say, oh, when you hear stuff like that, that's in real, the word real man it's an insult. It's kind of like the equivalent of calling a woman a bitch, because when you say that to a man and talk about, well, you're not a real man because you don't prop women up, you don't agree with abortion rights, you're not a real man. A real man would do this. And you're hearing women talk like this. You're hearing women in America starting to become more smug and become more arrogant and more delusional to how they think a man should be. They're trying to redefine masculinity, and then the whole entire party is trying to redefine masculinity. That's why they prop up this whole trans rights and LGBTQ issues out to the electorate, and they force it down people's throats. And then they see the arrogance, and what they don't see is that with social media, which they don't really understand, like the party is starting to have an understanding of social media, but they don't understand that when they use these types of words, that when it gets out into the well for the younger voters, it's like, oh, well, you're a toxic man. You're not a real man. I wouldn't date you because you don't believe in Kamala. You don't believe a woman can lead. And that's why I don't want to date you, or I don't want to have sex with you. And now that's starting to become a thing, because Kamala and Barack Obama and all these celebrities, they're trying to put that poison in the well for these women, these 20 somethings. They're trying to put the poison in the well and make this a real issue. And now these girls, which a lot of the girls that voted for Kamala, they're going to be angry at the men. And they're going to say, well, these men didn't want to vote a woman in office. I'm never dating men again. And it's going to get that bad. And I do believe that's going to become a thing now, because Me Too became a thing. All this stuff about sexual harassment and, microaggressions, whatever the fuck it was. It always microaggressions and decentering whiteness and shit like that. And I've seen all of that. These girls, a lot of these college girls that I went to school with, they started speaking all this academia shit to normal laymen, the average people that have never been to college. And it's like, you have all these bubbles, especially in college, because the reason why a lot of men aren't going to college anymore is because it's become so hostile with liberal politics on campus that at some point men aren't going to feel comfortable wanting to be on campus. Like when I was a student at Towson, they had all these programs. Breast Cancer Awareness Month. This is the other one that was the worst one. Walk a Mile in Her Shoes. And I'm sitting there and I see a lot of the liberal culture being bred on campus, and it kind of created a culture war. And they had this program at Towson called Walk a Mile in Her Shoes, where men put on women's high heels and they run, so they know what it feels like to be a man running from sexual assault. And I'm like, this is the stupidest shit. I'm trying to get my education. I ain't trying to participate in no putting high heels on and trying to race down a flight of steps or something like that to feel like what a woman feels like. I don't want to do that shit. Like, I'm here to get an education. I'm not here to participate in this bullshit. But then you have a lot of the liberal professors on campus that make you go see this thing called vagina monologues. And that's another liberal piece of garbage that gets fed, spoon fed to men on college campuses. You know, stupid ass stories about, they had all these stupid plays they make men go see. I had to go see Eve Ensler's vagina monologues on college campus, and I had to get extra credit for it, or else I wasn't going to pass my communication class, because the professor I had, she was Jewish and feminist. She had short hair and shit, and I had to do that in order to pass communication, and it was crazy. Like, I just didn't like it. Like, I got tired of that shit too. I was active duty army, now I'm reserve. You had to take some dumbass woke classes. Like, yeah, man. Like, I know, I understand your sentiments and your feelings, Randy. Cause I I felt like that all the time when I was in college. Like, you and guys like when y'all come out of the military and y'all go to college, and y'all go to college on a GI Bill, you're being made to feel intimidated on college campuses. Like, they don't like a lot of liberal politicians don't understand that. They don't see what we see every day when we walking around college campuses, and you're seeing all these women, and you're sitting in class, and you got to take a women's studies class, and all this other stupid shit, and gender studies and LGBTQ studies, and I'm like, and the girls on college campuses, sometimes we used to take those courses because it was a lot of cute girls in them classes. You know what I'm saying? It was a lot of fine women in them classes, but I also know, like, they always, you hear all these comments about, when I was sitting in women's studies classes, you're like, oh, men have it easier. I'm like, really? And I'm sitting there, I'm listening to these girls, and I'm just like, oh, men have it so easy. They don't get a period. They don't have to give childbirth. They always complaining about they don't have to get childbirth and all this stuff. And I'm like, yo, why did I sign up for this class? Why? And I'm like, I could have took another gen ed class, but I didn't want to take no macroeconomics or economics class. So I took like a real soft course, and it was always women's studies, gender studies, or relationship marriage studies. And I was like, I sat in two classes, and I remember I heard some girls that were talking, and it was like, oh, men have it easy. They cheat. They have multiple women on the side. I had my boyfriend for 5, and they always like huddle up into these war councils and skewer the guys, and they say it's a free speech class where you could express your opinions, but then when you express a certain opinion as a man, they all kind of like target you. You're made to feel uncomfortable. And then damn if they start talking about domestic violence in women's studies class, that's when the shit gets. I tried to skip and tell my professor, like, look, I can't come to class, I'm sick. And I looked on the roster, they're going to be discussing domestic intimate partner violence, and they try to make men out to be the fucking bullies and the fucking basically a crash test dummy. Like, they put men in a dummy mission, and I'm like, why the hell would any guy go to college? And I could see why college admissions for men is going down, and they're deciding to go straight to work or vocational, because they're getting tired of seeing the bullshit on college campuses. Hey man, thanks Randy. Thanks for tuning in. I enjoyed Joey, you be sure to subscribe, man. Be sure to subscribe. But thank you for tuning in and thank you for talking with me. You first one that came in here. Thank you. Peace. But like I was saying, oh thanks man. Thanks, Randy. But as I was saying, it just didn't make any sense for me to, for a lot of guys to really be in college because of all these liberal policies and people thinking in terms of liberalism. And it's like it's become a culture on college campuses now. And that's what's so crazy. I just feel as though liberalism needs to have a revamp and understand not everybody thinks the way that you do. And even if you don't agree with somebody, you don't have to stop speaking to them. You don't have to be in a position where now it's like an echo chamber and there's not diverse perspectives because they feel like men should not have a voice in women's issues. And that is true to a certain extent. But I have to honestly say, when you alienate men and you make this just a woman's issue and you don't invite them to the conversation, that's why you lost men. And that's one primary reason why men are getting sick and tired of the liberal bullshit. They're tired of it. They're exhausted. They're exhausted with liberal politics because they just don't feel like it's speaking to them. And the electorate thought that they knew what the common man or the working man was thinking. And they didn't. They missed the ball. You cannot go out here and shame other men for not voting for a woman. You cannot go out here and tell men that they're toxic because they're a man. You can't do that. You can't sit up here and tell a white person that they're bad because their ancestors enslaved blacks. You cannot punish them for that. You can't hang that albatross on them like that. That is wrong. And then you start alienating white men. Hardworking men that just want to come home, watch some TV, watch some Hulu, and drink a beer and unwind. Because men out here, they do the hardest fucking jobs in the world, man. Construction work, truck driving. Couldn't be me. We don't talk about embracing men in this economy, even though they do the hardest work. But we talking about teachers. We're talking about nurses. We're talking about them, but nobody never talked about the truck driver. Nobody never talked about the construction worker. Nobody talks about the welder, the plumber, none of those guys. And I used to think the same exact way. I used to be a snob back in the day. And I'm gonna tell you, and I'm gonna be God honest with you. I used to think the same exact way that women thought. And I was wrong for that. back then, and I challenged my viewpoints because I didn't think blue collar work was honorable work. I didn't think getting your hands dirty, because we were told as kids, we were told by liberal media that you have to be in a suit and tie to go to work. That was the liberal point of view in the 80s and the 90s and into the 2000s. You work for, Xerox, or you work for a Fortune 500 company. You work for the bank. You're a financer. You're a financial planner. You could put on a suit and tie and manage people's accounts. That was the viewpoint that liberal media tried to put in public schools. When I was a kid, everything was about wear a suit and tie. Work smart, not hard. And I believe that shit. I ate that shit up. Because in an American school system, they telling students, you need to work in a white collar society. You need to work in a corporation. And how many times have that used to be the conservative viewpoint? That became the liberal viewpoint. How did it become the liberal viewpoint? Because right after Clinton got into office, everybody that worked in a Fortune 500 company could afford 2 houses, 2 cars. That was the boom economy. And rightly so, Bill Clinton was able to convey that viewpoint. But the blue collar workers, they used to be Democrats. The union man, the steel worker. And those are the people that the Democratic Party tried to get away from. They tried to distance themselves from them. The Michigan plant worker. And they tried to do that shit, like they tried to do that shit with Obama, where they tried to play it up to where he was for the working class and he was for the Detroit plant worker, and their grievances got addressed in the Democratic Party when Obama was in office. But then they said, you know what, I'm tired of the Obama era. They making promises and not keeping them. He didn't bail out the auto industry. He ended up bailing out Wall Street. And then people started losing their jobs again. And that's when the auto workers went to the Republican Party. That was our electorate that Obama alienated, and then they shifted right. Because these key voters, they're getting tired of people getting tired of the Democratic Party taking them for granted. And that is the main issue that I've seen that's become problematic. And I think to a certain extent, the Democratic Party got a lot of work to do. They got to get away from this woke shit. Just cut it out. Cut it out. LGBT shit, cut it out. The whole white privilege bullshit, cut it out. Cut it out. Stop. Because it's turning people off. All people want to do is pay their bills and raise their fucking families. That's simple. That's why it was so simple for Donald Trump to win them over. They didn't come in talking about, white privilege, trans rights. They didn't go in, Donald Trump didn't go in talking about that shit. They went in saying, are you better off now than you were 4 years ago? Do you have money in your pockets? Do you feel safe in your neighborhood? Those are key issues. Do you feel safe in your neighborhood? Are you getting money? And Donald Trump was able to hit those barriers with every single electorate. And then he went to the city. I don't see how the hell Kamala Harris lost New York City so badly. It was crazy. Like it was just sad. Like you lost New York City of all places because you weren't down there engaging with the people. You weren't down there talking to young kids. I ain't see her kiss not one fucking baby. That's like a standard in politics. You gotta kiss a baby. You gotta hold a baby. All you saw was her dancing in fucking marching bands and shit. Like she didn't feel comfortable. She looked so uptight. It looked like she had a stick up her ass. And you can't be like that as a politician. You cannot be like that. Donald Trump did it differently. He went to events. He went to a UFC event. He went on Joe Rogan's show. He engaged with men. He got the male vote. He did. It's just amazing how he did that campaign. But they got a lot to learn. That identity politics shit, and I'm gonna wrap this up because it's getting late. But the identity politics shit, it's gotta go. People are tired of that bullshit. Don't nobody want to deal with that when you got motherfucking bills. When you gotta pay your medical bills, when you got medical debt, you got student loan debt. Don't nobody want to hear that shit. And you tell your friends this, they looking at you all funny. Looking like you murdered somebody. Oh, you voted for Trump. Like you murdered somebody. Like don't want to invite you to their gatherings no more and shit. Like the shit's getting out of hand. Don't want talking about they gonna hit you in your mouth when you see you. Like it's gotten to that point. This shit is breaking up families. It's breaking up marriages. Like it's just getting out of hand, man. The shit's gotta end. I ain't never seen no shit like this. It's just gotta end, but I've said a mouthful. But tune into another live next time. I'll probably be back on here next Friday. So be sure to tune in. I'm gonna have me another live later down the road, probably next week. But I thank you for engaging with my channel, Media Talks TV. This is the very first live that I'm doing, and I just want to talk to my subscribers and make sure I see y'all, and thank you for joining the channel. Keep tuning in. I got more videos. Coming up. It's been a busy week. Getting the stress out. I know it's a lot of people out there stressed about this election. I am too. But I just want people to know. Thank you for watching. Thank you for subscribing to my channel. That means a lot to me. We're trying to get this thing to 1,000 subscribers. I want to get this channel to 1,000 subscribers, but we got a couple more videos coming in. I'm going to be talking about a lot of topics, and especially traveling. So I'm a travel person, so I'm going to be talking about travel topics. I'm going to be talking about politics. I'm going to be talking about entertainment, and we just going to have a good time, man. So stay tuned. This is Media Talks TV. I'm Tony J. Nice to meet y'all, and I'm out, man. Peace. See y'all next time.